Hi, I'm Micah Jackson.
And I'm Andrew Bittner.
Welcome to the second episode of the HFT Weekly Newscast.
That we must embrace is not a simple change of political structure or economic policy, but rather a complete revolution of consciousness and awareness within the human mind.
Tonight's lead story deals with gun control and the United Nations. A few days ago, the Obama administration defied the United States Senate by voting to approve a United Nations arms treaty that has drawn a significant amount of criticism from both politicians and journalists. The treaty requires countries to create internal mechanisms to ensure that their arms exports aren't likely to be used to harm civilians or violate human rights laws. Senator James Inhofe, a Republican from Oklahoma, had this to say: "The UN arms treaty that passed in the General Assembly today would require the United States to implement gun control legislation as required by the treaty, which could supersede the laws our elected officials have already put into place." The National Rifle Association has opposed the treaty, stating the agreement is in conflict with the Second Amendment of the Constitution because it regulates the trade of small arms and calls for the creation of an end-user registry. 53 senators voiced their disapproval late last month by voting in favor of a non-binding amendment to a Senate budget resolution to stop the United States from entering the treaty. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott warned President Obama not to sign the treaty. He said, "If you sign it and if the United States Senate ratifies the treaty, Texas will lead the charge to have the treaty overturned in court as a violation of the Constitution." Secretary of State John Kerry said the treaty would strengthen global security while protecting the rights of countries to conduct legitimate arms trade. The Obama administration said the U.S. is already enforcing the standards of the treaty, but is intended to force smaller nations that export arms to follow the same regulations, though critics say otherwise. The UN panel responsible for the treaty nearly disbanded when North Korea, Iran, and Syria refused to give consensus. The Obama administration, which had initially insisted on complete group consensus, was adamant in its passage. The treaty was passed by a vote of 154 to 3, with North Korea, Iran, and Syria being the only three countries that voted in opposition. I have a few questions about this. Why would the United Nations do this? Why would the President of the United States, a country that values itself on the ideals of freedom, support such a thing? And why do we, as Americans, allow our liberty to be sacrificed in the name of security? And let us not forget Operation Fast and Furious, in the practice known as gun walking, where United States federal officials knowingly sold firearms to extremely violent drug cartels in Mexico in a supposed effort to track these cartel members. Firearms from these transactions were found at the murder scene of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, as well as countless other victims of the drug war. Just a reminder that the politicians that work to restrict the gun rights of people like you and me are the same ones that sell weapons to violent criminals. Can we trust these people? Do they have our best interests in mind? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. And now, Frank with the Peaceful Streets Project.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Houston Freethinkers Friday Night Newscast. I'm Frank Vadati. As a Peaceful Streets Project member, I do many things to hold cops accountable. One of the main actions I do is cop watching. What is cop watching, you might ask? Cop watching, or cop blocking, is the act of going out with the camera and recording police actions. While out on a cop watch last month, I was stopped by a couple on the streets. They asked me why we do what we do. I told them that our goal was to show both sides of the story, not just the state's. If it is your word against an officer's word in a state court, and you don't have any proof of the encounter, you're most likely SOL. I don't think I need to explain that acronym. I told them that if a cop assaults a person or steps on their rights and we are filming, then we have proof of that. They looked at me and said, "But if you film them, they might not abuse their power and abuse their rights." I looked at them with a smile and I said, "That's the point. By bringing the tool of transparency to the streets, we accomplish many things. We empower ourselves and our community. We bring to light what corrupt public officials want held in the dark." Ever heard someone say to you, if you have nothing to hide, then you should have nothing to worry about? Why don't we start holding our government to that same standard that we as a people are held to? Why is it okay for the government to film and watch our every movement, but if we do the same to them, we are unpatriotic? Standing up for your rights and speaking out against the coercive and tyrannical actions of the state is honestly the most patriotic thing you can do. That's how this country was founded in the first place. America wasn't founded by people being apathetic to King George's intrusion into their lives. So why do we allow ourselves to be apathetic to the police state and intrusion into our private lives? Filming the police is one of the easiest actions you can take in standing up for your rights, your natural rights. Rights that aren't granted by a piece of paper, but are granted by simply being on this earth. So next time you are pulled over or see someone pulled over, do yourselves and your community a favor. Get out and film the cops. You could save a life. And remember, you are perfectly within your legal rights to film a public official on public streets. Back to you, Andrew and Micah.
Thanks, Frank.
And now we go to Derek Bros in the Conscious Report with a developing story on disaster relief camps in the Houston area.
On Wednesday, April 3rd, the City of Houston voted to approve a contract bid to build base camps for post-disaster relief. These base camps are being planned as emergency centers that will house police, fire, and emergency workers along with other city employees. We acquired a presentation that was shown to City Council listing all the needs they had for this contract. Now, your tax dollars are going to fund an emergency camp specifically for city employees where they will be lounging in recreation tents with 52-inch screen TVs. They'll have 10 pounds of ice per person. They'll have ping pong tables, served 4 meals a day, snacks, all the necessary condiments, all these things on your dollar. Now, only one city council member stood up against this, Councilmember Helena Brown. She said, quote, "In light of human history, it's concerning to citizens when their government entertains discussions on establishing government-operated survival camps. This time, the discussion at City Council has gone further, spending about $36 million on a camp to supposedly protect a single privileged group city employees. Their argument is that this group must be protected so they can better assist civilians. This argument violates the principles of America's founding." Quite right, Helena. Thank you for standing up against this. So, what are we to think when the government tells us if we stockpile food, if we prepare for emergencies, that we could possibly be terrorists, yet at the same time they're doing these very things? Maybe we should pay attention to what they're doing. We should find the locations where they're planning on building these centers that are supposed to house 11,000 people and keep an eye on what they're doing. And also, if you've never been to City Council, now might be the time to start doing so. Every week there's new measures such as this FEMA base camp thing that get through without anyone being there to stop them. So if we decide to take time out of our lives just one afternoon on a Tuesday, we can go down there and find out what exactly the status they're doing. This is Derek Bros with the Conscious Report. And as always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Back to you guys.
Bills being discussed in the Texas legislature cover a broad range of concerns, from information policy to homeowner concerns to business concerns to the drug war to the growing police state. House Bill 2934, introduced by Hunter, prohibits government officials in open meetings from texting or posting online the occurrences in those meetings. House Joint Resolution 112 prohibits government from storing individual income, debt, purchase history, or credit history without permission. If House Bill 582 becomes law and you own a home swimming pool, you will be required to provide a cover or an alarm for that pool. If House Bill 1269 becomes law, then in the state of Texas, bars and clubs will be required to sell non-alcoholic beer and wine. In the drug war, House Bill 184, introduced by Dutton, decriminalizes less than 1 ounce of marijuana. House Bill 124, introduced by Anderson, moves salvia to a penalty group 3, thus criminalizing another plant. In the growing police state, House Bill 3304 denies vehicle registrations to those convicted of a red light camera and failure to pay. House Bill 1690 allows police to quarantine groups, property, or area under oath of a health official or court order. House Bill 1063, when coupled with Senate Bill 767, requires those convicted of a Class B misdemeanor to have their DNA entered into the state's DNA database. So that's a summary of a few of the bills in the Texas legislature that concern freedom. There's so much more going on. You need to get involved. Please do find the bills at Texas legislature online. You can find more information on the HoustonFreeThinkers.com.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check us out on the HoustonFreeThinkers.com for more news articles and our social network.
Also, follow us on Twitter at Houston is Free. Find us on Facebook as the Houston Free Thinkers. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and make it out to East End Studio Gallery Thursday, April 11th for the premiere of our first full-length documentary, HFT, at RNC 2012. Until next week, live free, think free, and you will be free.
Going up in flames.
It's burning.
Nobody wanna take the blame.
But that's all right.
Don't tell me
Yeah, you can cut this
how to
part
live
out.
my life.
Because I know.
When you, the world is on fire, the poison in the water as this motherfucker burns. And nobody is learned because the fluoride has you becoming unconcerned. And only thinking about yourself, apathetic to reality, you're never seeking help. Sitting in a bubble, ignorant to trouble, but that will all change when you're listening to double. I question everything, including the questions, for the graduates and those new to the lessons. Valedictorian in the school of corrections. Now I'm teaching the class and it's you I'm testing. The mood I'm left in when authoring change is one of love, cause I see the world is lost in pain. And I can't watch as it's engulfed in flames, because I know the names that we ought to blame.
This world going up in flames, and nobody wanna take the blame. Don't tell me how to live my life when you
The fight, the blaze, every day I read, because knowledge is the water for the flames that I see. There's no other fireman the same as me, cause I know exactly how things came to be. I know the arsonist that made the spark to burn the world, making all the days get dark. I've investigated the crimes done to the people. With light I always find the sons of evil. The powers that be, the rich and elite, sustaining pressure that leaves us all twisted and weak. Overwhelmed, we get sick from the heat, but I won't let that stop me from ever hitting the streets, cause ignorance is an inferno. Once the embers ignite, at first they burn. We are witnessing the fall of the republic as tyrants try to make us all their subjects. They buy up newspapers, TVs, and magazines as they try to implement a fascist regime. Corporations have been